Hello world of YouTube and welcome to List Week 2019. My list week's going to be extended a little differently than the list weeks. I'm starting on the 1st as opposed to the 30th like I said I would be, just because I wanted to get the last couple of visages done for the year. But we're here. And today I'm going to be starting with my top 11 films that I saw in 2019. Now last year, like I wanted to do this year, I saw more movies than I did last year, and I really kind of exposed myself to a lot of what was happening, what was big in all realms, whether it be blockbuster, independent, small time, stuff that was getting talked about. I tried to go out of my way to see it, and
it's sad because even though I saw a lot this year, there's still some big movies I didn't get to see. I didn't get to see Parasite. I didn't get to see Uncut Gems yet. I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I sadly still didn't get to see The Lighthouse before the year's end. That one was one I was like, I gotta see it. I gotta see it. And I just missed it just barely. But I had to get this list done. That's why I'm doing it now. And I'm sorry.
I feel like this was a great year for film all around. I feel like a lot of different types of movies were doing well. I feel like platforms like Netflix continue to make engaging movies that really had a lot of different things going on both sides, both in the independent realm and the big blockbuster realm. And I was wholly impressed with this year as a whole. Now, unlike my songs and albums list, I won't be doing a worst films list, but hands down, the worst film I saw this year was The Fanatic. It was so bad. I both love and hate Chris Stuckman for putting it out there, like giving an opinion on it and showing the world just how bad this movie was. John Travolta, this is like on par with his performance in Battlefield Earth as the weirdest thing he's been a part of. Fred Durst is Fred Durst. Fucking Stan is so weird in this movie. This movie is just a weird thing to sit down and watch. But it's one of those movies. I'm glad we got one to close the decade out on. One of those you need to watch it because it's so bad films. But it is truly abhorrent. The writing is bad. It's a bad film. But with the worst out of the way, let's talk about the best. I know I sang this movie's praises a lot when I did my review initially a couple months ago, and I still think that this film is a lot of fun, and it's really well shot, and Aaron Paul still acts his ass off in this movie. Just as I thought about it, the little flaws I had with it stood out a little more, and I just haven't had really an urge to rewatch it. I do still think that it's a great ending to Jesse Pinkman's story and ties up a lot of loose ends that are in the show, but ultimately I just found myself more distance from this film as the months grew on, and I watched other movies and rewatched movies that I had seen in the year that just stuck out to me more personally. Great God in heaven, you know This film is equal parts hilarious and heartwarming. I know a little bit about the Dolomite movies. I've seen some clips on the internet, but I walked away from this even more intrigued by those films because the level of work that went into making them, that's documented in this movie at least, is amazing, given they had like next to nothing to work with. In tandem with that, not only was the story great, a lot of the performances were amazing. I'm glad Eddie Murphy seemingly gives a shit, and he is hilarious in this movie. So is Wesley Snipes. I was not expecting Wesley Snipes to be as good as he is in this movie. The cast all around is great, but I just, like I'll say at another point in this list, I'm happy to see an older actor who's made some shitty movies actually care about a role he's in, again, enough to put in a really good performance. And I like the message that this movie has embedded at its core of persevering amidst any struggles that may happen in the scene that you're in. You can make whatever you want to make, and it'll find somebody. And I love that. It's so, again, it works. And it's fitting given the era of entertainment we're in now, where everyone with a camera kind of makes their own thing and puts it out there. It was a great movie and a lot of fun, and it's worth your time. This has been a great year for DC films, and Shazam was kind of the catalyst for this great year. You know, this showed off everything that a lot of the extended DCU films were missing. It was tighter. It wasn't filled with a lot of bullshit, even though it had a lot of world building to do, because Shazam is kind of an offshoot character that I know a lot of people weren't really expecting to see a movie for, at least at this point in the DCEU. But people may have slept on this movie. Don't sleep on it. It's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of heart. Heart has been what's missing in DC films as well. It's so charming. Zachary Levi owns this character. He owns this role. The villain is also really fun. I like that it's kind of subdued as well. It's not as big and grandiose as all the other films have been. I like that it's kind of a more intimate feeling character piece. The ensemble of the kids also work really well for a lot of the movie. People have kind of been comparing this to the Raimi SpiderMan films, and I could see that in some points. This is a great superhero movie in the superhero-iest of ways. There's some moments that feel very comic book in the best way. And I know I talk a lot about Marvel films, and it may make it seem like I'm a Marvel fanboy, but if DC puts out good movies, I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to praise them, because I also really do like DC. And I am excited that they're at least putting themselves on the right path with this year, and I hope that they continue that in the following decade that's coming. I reviewed this film on the channel. Rocketman is a fun, dazzling, well-constructed musical. A lot of the musical set pieces are well choreographed. Like I said in my review, feels like a stage play put on the screen. Taron Egerton owns the role of Elton John. It has some minute flaws, but as a whole, this stands above some of the recent musical biopics I've seen, and is definitely worth your time, whether you saw it on the big screen or you're catching it now. It's one that you gotta own. If you like Elton John, you're gonna like this movie. I feel like it's a love letter to the guy, and it's just a really enthralling ride. I like this movie. I think it's great. It's got a lot of cool moments. It's worth its runtime to me. I like how grand it feels. It feels like the grand send-off this era of the MCU needed, and it tied a lot of things up in a nice little bow. I like a lot of the character moments that happen in it, both with the long-standing players and the little moments that set up potentially things to happen in the future. This was a movie I'm glad worked as well as it did. You know, because like I said in my Infinity War review, it was set up for, it had a great setup, and I'm glad it didn't fail to stick the landing, in my opinion. It's a great film. A lot of fun. And, God, some goosebump-inducing moments, you know, that as a huge comic book fan just gave me such joy.
Send in the clowns.
I mean, I like I said, this is an amazing year for DC film, and while a lot of jokes surrounding around this movie and kind of the Joker as a character at this point, there is a lot of good stuff in this movie. You know, I don't think it's obviously my favorite film of the year, and I guarantee you if I saw some of the other movies that I had wanted to see this year, like Lighthouse and Parasite, this would be much lower. But man, this is a nice character piece. I've seen better character studies, but I like what they did with the character of the Joker here. Some minor missteps, but Joaquin Phoenix as a whole knocks it out of the park. Todd Phillips kind of steps up a little bit as a director. There's a better eye for cinematography in this film than I think I've seen in some of his other movies. This feels like a nice step above for him. And again, it's a great comic. It's a great like origin story in a way that we haven't really seen in movies. You know, I like the fact that we saw the birth of a villain, and I like that the first kind of slice that we got of that in film is with one of the most enigmatically mysterious villains in comic books. There's a lot of good scenes in here. the, you know, if you want to talk about commentary it has for you know, society as a whole, yeah, there's some poignant stuff here. Do I think it's a little ham-fisted? Absolutely. But I think that some moments really do nail it on the head, in my opinion, and it's worth your time if you want to see something like that. I can see why some people would call this a sophomore slump for Ari Aster because of its glacial pace and maybe how it does its horror. But I personally really enjoyed a lot of those aspects of this film. And it actually made me appreciate Hereditary a little more. I didn't talk about Hereditary last year, but I did see it last year. And my issues with it are still kind of there, but retroactively I probably would have put this on my end of the year list because while this tackles similar themes, I love how different yet similar both of these films are. I like the glacial pace to a point. I think there's some parts where he could have maybe trimmed it up a little bit. I don't necessarily like all of the side characters, but I think the main players here all work really well, and their performances are encapsulating. I love how this relationship, how real the core relationship between the two characters feels. The horror that's here, I like. I understand why it may have been done the way it did to kind of be the opposite of a film like Hereditary. But this film is still very unnerving and unsettling at its core as well. This movie has the sense of dread that looms over it, and it makes you uncomfortable. I also like the way it's shot. You know, the whole psychedelics thing that this movie was kind of praised for, I think it's amazing. And it makes me not want to do shrooms ever. Because if that's what it's like, and people have told me that's pretty similar to what it's like, I'm good. I don't need that. I'll sit back and just do what I like to do. But this film is really good. And if you liked Hereditary and you may have missed Midsommar, it's worth your time. I can't help it. I like SpiderMan. I know this may seem like the most me choice, and it sticks out like a sore thumb in my top 5 because none of my top 5 are comic book films or action movies. They are very much bigger films because this is an amazing year for that kind of filmmaking. But man, this is probably my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie. I like that it grows not only from Homecoming, but it grows from everything else Peter Parker's been a part of since Homecoming. I think Tom Holland is still the best live-action Peter Parker we have. I love the growth between characters like Happy and Aunt May. I love Zendaya in this as MJ. Ned I even like more in this film, and I like his arc. And Flash Thompson also has like a nice subtle arc that builds throughout this film. And don't even get me started on Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. It is so good. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. I love him in this movie. There's a lot of fun moments as well from a cinematic perspective. There's some cool action scenes. There's a lot of just Spider-Man doing Spider-Man shit in his own Spider-Man way. And the end of this movie, the mid-credits scene, is my favorite in all of the MCU. Like, what the fuck? This movie is so good. I did not expect it to be this good because while I really like Homecoming, this is not only following up Endgame and Infinity War, it's following up Spider-Verse, arguably the best Spider-Man movie. And I gotta say, while it's not as good as Spider-Verse, it goes toe-to-toe. Obviously, I like it more than Endgame, but it goes toe-to-toe with those big Marvel films. Like, this is, again, a little more intimate. It's very much a Spider-Man movie, but I like that it also kind of shows the world in reflection post-Endgame. This is a movie that I enjoyed, full stop. And I cannot wait to see what the fuck they do with this.
Gotta do this more often.
And I spent the better part of the last couple of years defending The Last Jedi. I still think that it's a pretty good film, but I also really respect Rian Johnson as a filmmaker. I love his 3 films prior to The Last Jedi, and I think that Knives Out is a little more in his wheelhouse. I like this more than The Last Jedi and a couple of his other films from earlier in his career. I think that the style that's present in those other films of his is still here from a cinematography perspective and from a kind of character and acting perspective. He gets certain performances out of actors. But the intrigue that he plants in here and the journey that the film takes you on is fun to watch. It's also a very funny movie. Rian Johnson, as you can tell by The Last Jedi, Doesn't really stray from comedy, and I like its place here. There's some genuinely funny moments. Chris Evans is a delight on screen, especially after watching him play Captain America for 10 years. I like this film a lot. It was a great mystery that I loved watching unravel. I kind of like the message of the film as well, like the core ideals that the conclusion kind of builds to. And it's definitely a film that I want to rewatch. I want to get it on Blu-ray when it comes out. And I want to show people, because I feel like I've talked to some people about this film and they were kind of hesitant to watch it because they didn't like The Last Jedi. But like I told them, if you skipped out on this film because you don't like The Last Jedi, watch Knives Out. It's more of a Rian Johnson film, but I say that meaning that it works better when removed from the mythos of Star Wars. Again, I still really like The Last Jedi. I understand why some people have issues with it. I don't like some of the issues people take with it, but this is an entirely different beast altogether, and it's a much better constructed film as well. Definitely worth your time. A lot of fun to watch. Now, I'm going to say this in other lists that I'm making, but a big reason why I wait until January to make my year-end lists is because of films like Marriage Story. This film is so fucking gut-wrenching and powerful. I was introduced to Noah Baumbach with his Meyerowitz stories, which I thought was a solid film. I saw it the year that it came out. I thought it was nice, and I liked that he got really good performances out of actors like Ben Stiller and Adam Sandler, who don't necessarily have a most consistent track record. But god damn, do Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver just sell this fucking failing marriage. This is a sad movie. It is a powerfully sad movie. There's a lot of moments that just get you right here, whether you've seen a divorce, you've been through it, or not. There were moments in this film that were relatable to me personally, and I've never been divorced, I've never seen a divorce happen, but I've been through legal things before with friends, and yeah, some of the processes in this film hit a little too close to home in a really realistic way, and I appreciated that. But man, is the dialogue great, or is the cinematography just unrelentingly uncomfortable? There's moments that just linger, and there's things that you wish would just cut, or you would want something else to happen, but it just leaves you in this scene, whether it's a monologue that just feels uncomfortable to sit through, or an argument, the argument scene. I mean, there's a lot of moments in this film that just are acting done on full display. I really believed that Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson were just this bitter couple. I mean, it's a great movie. If you haven't watched it, give it a watch. It is an incredible film, and goddamn, just goddamn. I would not be surprised if Martin Scorsese didn't direct another movie after this. This felt like a swan song, not just because it's almost 4 hours long, but he's bringing in actors that some of which have come out of retirement, bringing them together in another film about the death of the mob era and the death of mobsters, which again was kind of his calling card. But this felt like just a really sad film, like Marriage Story. This is kind of a sad movie, but in a completely different way. Like I said about Eddie Murphy, I'm glad that Robert De Niro gives a shit about a character that he's playing, and he plays the Irishman very, very well. Joe Pesci was also really good in this. Al Pacino, and in a role that seemed tailor-made to him. Jimmy Hoffa, he just does a great job. The smaller actors as well, like Ray Romano, he's good in the role that he's in. I even liked Diet Matt Damon, who was also in the Breaking Bad movie. He's pretty solid in this as well, and what pieces that he's in. I liked a lot of this film. I think some people have issues with the length, but I liked it. I thought that the only slow part of the film was really the beginning, but once it picks up momentum, it just keeps going until it just comes to a head and leaves you just like with a pit in your stomach. This was obviously a well-shot movie. It's Martin Scorsese. He knows what the fuck he's doing. And it's impressive that a man who's been doing film for this long can still dazzle with how he does his craft. He can get these kind of performances out of actors. He can get shots and construct ideas to make a film of this scale. It is, like I said, it's a great swan song for Martin Scorsese. It's everything that kind of has encapsulated Scorsese's career in a huge epic about mobsters. It is a fucking amazing movie. It's well worth your time. I've talked to numerous people that have avoided this film because of its length, but it's worth it. Whether you watch it in chunks or in one big sitting like I did, sit with The Irishman, watch it. It's so goddamn good. And that was my list. What did you think about it? What were some of your favorite movies that came out this year? Let me know in those comments down below. If there's a movie I didn't talk about, let me know, because there is a special video I'm doing next week, that's dropping next week, that goes over some of the movies I saw in 2019 that I felt like were worth talking about for one reason or another. But either way, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you'd like to join their ranks, linked in the description is my Patreon. I'm going to get out of here. I've been Val Rack. You guys have good days, lots, and situations. And I'll see you another day.